The void of Inthori Reach stretched before Kindaram's eyes, a sparse region of space where ancient cosmic corridors intersected. From the command deck of his flagship, the High Marshal of the ARL Dominion contemplated the vast emptiness, a canvas upon which his empire had painted conquest for millennia. The stars were few here, but each one represented potential. Resources to claim, worlds to subjugate, species to bend to the will of the Dominion. High Marshal, a voice interrupted his meditation. We've detected an anomalous signal from an abandoned mining station in Sector 4 to 9. Kindaram turned, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the polished obsidian floor. 4,000 years of genetic perfection had crafted the ARL into the ideal conquering species, strength, intelligence, and unwavering resolve in a single package. Their crystalline skin caught the ambient light, refracting it into prismatic patterns that danced across the walls. Classification, he asked, voice rumbling like distant thunder. Unknown, sir. The signature doesn't match any species in our archives. It appears to be new, a new species. The words hung in the air with delicious promise. The Dominion's protocol was clear: approach with maximum force, subjugate or eliminate if resistance was encountered. It was the way of things, the natural order that had served the ARL for 4 millennia. Prepare a reconnaissance fleet. 100 warships should suffice for this. Introduction. Kindaram's mandibles clicked in anticipation. Colonel Arrival will command. As the officer departed to relay the orders, Kindaram returned his gaze to the stars. A new species was hardly cause for concern. The Dominion had consumed hundreds before, their civilizations now nothing more than footnotes in the vast archives of AR Solaris. This would be no different. Hours later, Colonel Arrival's fleet departed, 100 warships slicing through the void toward the abandoned mining station. Kindaram monitored their progress from his command center, a holographic display showing the fleet's formation, a standard hunting pattern that had proven effective countless times before. Approaching target, Arrival's voice came through the comm, launching boarding parties to investigate. The feed switched to helmet cameras of the boarding team. 2 ARL soldiers moved through the derelict station, their weapon lights cutting through the darkness. The station was cold, abandoned long ago when the mineral veins ran dry. Signs of recent activity, one soldier reported. These markings are fresh. The camera panned across strange symbols etched into a bulkhead, geometric patterns that seemed to follow some arcane mathematical principle. Sir, I'm detecting energy spikes. The transmission erupted into chaos. Flashes of light, screams, static. We're under attack. Arrival's voice cut through the confusion. Deploying defensive measures. Kindaram leaned forward, mandibles twitching in surprise. The camera feeds showed small, agile drones swarming the ARL ships. Their movements were peculiar, not random, but following some complex pattern that the ARL targeting systems struggled to anticipate. Focus fire on the largest concentrations, Arrival commanded, but the drones were already dispersing, regrouping in new formations that seemed designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in the ARL defensive grid. 3 warships exploded in quick succession, their shields failing precisely when the drones concentrated their fire. Retreat. Regroup at. Arrival's transmission cut off abruptly as his command ship's communications array was targeted with surgical precision. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the attack ceased. The remaining drones vanished, jumping to some unknown coordinates, leaving behind the crippled ARL fleet and a mystery that gnawed at Kindaram's pride. This was not the simple introduction he had anticipated. This species, whoever they were, had just bloodied the nose of the mightiest empire in known space. They had struck with precision, with purpose, with a strategy that suggested they knew exactly what they were facing. The High Marshal's crystalline skin darkened with anger. "Convene the War Council," he commanded. "We have a problem to solve." As his officers filed into the strategic chamber, Kindaram couldn't shake the feeling that they had just encountered something dangerous, a species that might not be as easily subjugated as the countless others that had fallen before the might of the ARL Dominion. Perhaps this species was not primitive after all. The War Council of the ARL Dominion sat in somber silence as the holographic replay of Colonel Arrival's disastrous encounter played out before them. Kindarum watched their reactions, mandibles twitching, skin shifting through spectrums of dark colors indicating anger, confusion, even fear. "This cannot stand," Fleet Admiral Zorvivex finally spoke, her voice brittle with rage. "We must respond with overwhelming force." "Agreed," Kindarum said. "I am mobilizing 500 warships to the Fintor system. Intelligence suggests this is where these humans have established their forward base." The word humans tasted foreign on his tongue. Their intercepted communications had revealed their name, though little else. A bipedal species, apparently carbon-based like many others they had encountered. Unremarkable in appearance, yet remarkably troublesome in their first contact. "I will lead the fleet personally," Kindarum continued. "We will crush them swiftly and add their worlds to our holdings." 2 days later, the Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Fintora system. Kindarum stood on the command deck of his dreadnought, the pride of AR Solaris, as sensor data flooded in. "Contact," announced the tactical officer. 7 human vessels detected. Classification, destroyer class. Their technology appears rudimentary by our standards. Kindarum's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Only 7 ships? They insult us. Deploy in Subjugation Formation Alpha. Let's teach them the price of defiance." The ARL fleet moved forward with practiced precision, 500 ships arranging themselves in a complex, three-dimensional pattern designed to envelop and annihilate any opposition. Against 7 destroyers, it was overkill, but the Dominion did not believe in fair fights. "Human vessels holding position," reported the tactical officer. "They appeared to be waiting for death," quipped Admiral Zorvivex, who had joined Kindarum for this mission. "Commence firing when in range." The distance closed. Targeting solutions were calculated. Weapons charged. And then the impossible happened. The 7 human ships simultaneously executed what could only be described as perfectly coordinated warp jumps. They vanished from their positions, reappearing instantly at precise points throughout the ARL formation, points where the overlapping defensive fields were weakest. "Impossible," roared Zorvivex. "No species has mastered such precise micro-jumps." Before the ARL fleet could react, the human ships unleashed a devastating barrage. They didn't target randomly. Each shot struck with surgical precision at critical systems, propulsion, weapons, shields. 10 ARL capital ships exploded in the first volley. "Return fire," Kindarum commanded, but the human ships were already disappearing again, executing another series of impossibly precise jumps to new weak points in the formation. Another volley, another dozen ARL ships destroyed or crippled. The Dominion fleet fell into disarray. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force and predictable enemy responses, neither of which applied in this situation. The humans were changing the battlefield faster than the ARL commanders could adapt. After watching 50 ships destroyed for minimal damage to the enemy, Kindarum made a decision that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. "All vessels, execute emergency withdrawal. Return to AR Solaris perimeter." The retreat was chaotic, with several more ships lost as they attempted to disengage. The humans did not pursue beyond the system's edge, allowing the remnants of the once proud fleet to limp away in shame. Back aboard the pride of AR Solaris, the War Council convened an emergency session. "How?" demanded Zorvivex. "How did they anticipate our every move?" The chief strategist, Velik Tarn, stepped forward, his aged frame trembling slightly. "I have analyzed the battle data. Their jumps were not random. They knew exactly where our formation's weaknesses would be, exactly when to strike." "That's impossible," Kindarum growled. "Our tactical formations are classified at the highest level." "And yet," Velik Tarn continued, "they knew. My analysis suggests they possess an extremely advanced predictive mathematical system. They ran probability calculations to determine our likely tactics and exploited them perfectly. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. "This changes nothing," declared the Supreme Commander, joining the conversation from his holographic projection from AR Solaris. "We will not be humiliated by some upstart species. I am dispatching 2,000 ships to the Morassa system. We will exterminate these humans before their contagion spreads." Kindarum felt a flicker of unease. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should first study there." "The decision is made. High Marshal," the Supreme Commander interrupted. "The honor of the Dominion must be restored. 2,000 ships will ensure our victory, regardless of their mathematical tricks." 7 days later, the Second Armada arrived at the Morassa system. Kindarum, still nursing wounded pride from his own defeat, watched the tactical feeds with growing apprehension. The Armada detected no human ships upon arrival. They advanced cautiously toward the fourth planet, believed to house a human outpost. When they crossed the system's asteroid belt, disaster struck. Thousands of nuclear mines, primitive but devastatingly effective when deployed in such numbers, detonated simultaneously. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted shields and communications, leaving the ARL fleet vulnerable as waves of automated drones emerged from hiding places throughout the asteroid field. Kindarum watched in horror as the tactical display showed ship after ship going dark. Over 1,000 vessels destroyed or disabled before they could fire a single shot. The remainder tried to regroup to establish some defense, but the humans had calculated this too. Their mines and drones had created a perfect killing field, anticipating exactly how the ARL would respond to the initial attack. When the remnants of the fleet finally limped home, the Dominion was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. An enemy that seemed to know what they would do before they did it. Rumors spread throughout the Empire. The humans were demons. They could see the future. They had infiltrated the highest levels of Dominion command. None of these were true, but the truth was perhaps more frightening. The humans had simply reduced the art of war to a science, a mathematical certainty. And Kindarum felt the pressure mounting. He had to destroy the humans at any cost, or the invincible image of the ARL Dominion would be shattered forever. The private chambers of the High Marshal were dim, illuminated only by the soft glow emanating from Kindarum's own crystalline skin. 2 consecutive defeats had darkened his normally radiant appearance. The internal luminescence that marked ARL status now dulled with shame. "A covert operation," he said to the small group of his most trusted officers. "No official records. No communication with high command." Admiral Zorvivex nodded grimly. "What do you propose?" 3 ships only. The newest dreadnought, the Indomitable Will, and 2 escort cruisers. We will swing wide around the stellar arc and approach the Ghoul Prime system from its dark side. Tactical Officer Marin Vanth leaned forward. "Objective? Intelligence gathering," Kindarum replied. "Or better yet, capture one of their commanders. We need to understand their technology, this predictive capability that has twice brought us to ruin." The plan was set in motion with absolute secrecy. The 3 ships departed under the guise of a routine patrol, then altered course once beyond monitoring range. For 2 weeks, they traveled through little-used hyperspace corridors, avoiding all contact. When they finally approached the outer boundary of the Ghoul Prime system, confidence had returned to the mission. They had traveled undetected, approaching from an angle no one would expect. Even with superhuman predictive abilities, the humans couldn't possibly anticipate what they didn't know was coming. Or so they thought. The moment the ARL ships decelerated at the system's edge, proximity alarm screamed. Human destroyers materialized from behind sensor-shielded asteroids, positions they must have held for days, waiting. "Impossible," Marin Vanth cried. They couldn't have known. Before Kindarum could issue orders, the human vessels launched swarms of boarding craft. Not the expected assault of ship-to-ship weaponry, but a direct boarding action, a tactic so archaic the ARL had no standard defense against it. The Indomitable will shuddered as boarding craft attached to its hull. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as hull breaches were reported across multiple decks. Repel boarders. Kindarum roared into the comm. All security teams deploy. But the humans moved with precision through the massive dreadnought, clearly guided by perfect knowledge of its layout. They bypassed main corridors, used maintenance tunnels, and appeared exactly where the ARL defenders weren't. The two escort cruisers exploded simultaneously, internal explosions suggesting the humans had somehow planted charges aboard them before the ARL even arrived. On the command deck, Kindarum drew his ceremonial blade as the doors buckled under assault. When they finally gave way, he found himself facing not an overwhelming force, but a single human female in combat armor, flanked by only 6 soldiers. "High Marshal Kindarum," she said, her voice translated through some device. "I am Colonel Samantha Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. Your ship is now under our control. All resistance has ceased." Kindarum snarled, raising his blade. How? How did you know we would be here?" The human smiled thinly. "We knew you would come. We knew exactly when you would arrive, because we ran millions of simulations until the probability approached certainty. Your species is remarkably predictable." She gestured, and her soldiers secured the command deck. With practiced efficiency. "You see, High Marshal, the ARL Dominion has been under observation for some time. Your tactical doctrine, your command structure, your very thought processes have been analyzed. You lack creativity. You rely on overwhelming numbers rather than innovation." One of her soldiers handed her a data pad. She glanced at it, then looked back to Kindarum. "And now you've handed us your most advanced dreadnought. Thank you for accelerating our timetable." The implications crashed down on Kindarum like a collapsing star. The humans now possessed ARL technology, shields, weapons, faster-than-light drives. Technology they would undoubtedly reverse engineer and use against the Dominion. "You have no idea what you've done," he growled. "The full might of the ARL Dominion will descend upon your worlds. Tens of thousands of ships, billions of soldiers. You cannot hope to." "We've run those simulations too," Colonel Reyes interrupted, "and we've prepared accordingly." As Kindarum was led away in restraints, a cold certainty settled in his core. The Dominion had inadvertently armed its own destroyer. Word of the dreadnought's capture spread through the Dominion like wildfire. The Supreme Commander ordered full mobilization, every ship, every soldier. Slave worlds throughout ARL space were stripped of their defensive garrisons to bolster the main fleet. But the humans now understood ARL technology intimately. And worse, they understood the ARL themselves. While the Dominion prepared its crushing response, whispers of rebellion began to echo through the subjugated worlds. The invincible masters suddenly seemed vulnerable. The doom of an empire, for millennia in the making, had begun. The massive cordon of warships stretched across the star systems bordering human space. A blockade unprecedented in scale. Tens of thousands of ARL vessels formed an impenetrable wall, determined to contain the human threat, while the Supreme Commander gathered an even larger force for the final assault. "Let them rot in their little corner of space," Fleet Admiral Zorvivex declared to the War Council. "We have them surrounded. When our reinforcements arrive, we will crush them utterly." But humans, as the ARL were painfully learning, did not behave as expected. While the blockade focused on conventional approach vectors, human vessels slipped through using what appeared to be temporary wormholes, technology theorized by ARL scientists but never successfully implemented. These stealth squadrons bypassed the entire defensive line, converging directly on AR Solaris itself. The first indication of catastrophe came when the planetary defense grid suddenly went offline. Then nuclear detonations blossomed across the surface of the Dominion's sacred homeworld. Kindarum, monitoring from his flagship at the blockade's edge, watched in stunned disbelief as live feeds showed the majestic spires of the Imperial City collapsing under the onslaught. The grand monuments, standing for 4,000 years, reduced to radioactive rubble in minutes. All ships, return to AR Solaris immediately, he commanded, his voice breaking with emotion. But the humans had anticipated this too. As the blockade dispersed, racing back to defend the homeworld, they encountered waves of nuclear mines positioned precisely along their retreat paths. Ship after ship vanished in atomic fire, their predictable response to the homeworld's distress becoming their undoing. Those vessels that managed to reach AR Solaris found the planet's surface transformed into a sea of fire. The seat of the mighty ARL Dominion, reduced to ash in mere hours. And then the communication channels erupted with new emergency signals. Throughout the Empire, subjugated worlds were rising in coordinated rebellion. Slave races, sensing weakness, overthrew their ARL masters. Colonial governors were assassinated. Statues and symbols of Dominion rule were destroyed in scenes of jubilation broadcast across all frequencies. Kindarum desperately tried to rally what remained of the Imperial forces. To all loyal subjects of the Dominion, stand firm. This is but a temporary setback. We will rebuild. We will. His transmission was cut short as his own crew, many drawn from conquered worlds, stormed the command deck. The mutiny spread, like contagion, through what remained of the fleet. Within a week, 8 major star systems have fallen. Within a month, 20 more. The mighty ARL war machine, stripped of its coordination and leadership, broke apart into isolated pockets of resistance that were systematically eliminated by human forces and liberated former slaves. As desperate ARL battle groups attempted to regroup at designated rally points, they found human forces waiting, as if their secret contingency plans had been known all along. 20,000 warships were destroyed across 8 star systems in less than a week. A message from the humans was broadcast on all frequencies. We do not seek fairness. We seek peace. The ARL Dominion, which had stood for 4,000 years, which had subjugated hundreds of species and conquered thousands of worlds, collapsed entirely within 6 months. Kindarum survived, bitter and broken, a prisoner of the species he had so grievously underestimated. The last of the Dominion's ruling bloodline, witness to its final downfall. The cell was sparse, but not uncomfortable. Kindarum sat on the simple bed, listening to the bustling sounds outside. 6 months ago, he had commanded the mightiest military force in known space. Now, he was the last high-ranking officer of a dead empire. The door slid open, revealing Colonel Samantha Reyes. She had discarded her combat armor for a simple military uniform, but carried herself with the same confident authority he remembered from their first meeting aboard the captured dreadnought. "High Marshal," she acknowledged, taking a seat across from him. "Why such formality?" he asked bitterly. "My rank means nothing now. Courtesy costs nothing," she replied. "And history should remember what was, even as it celebrates what will be." Kindarum's crystalline skin darkened. "Why destroy us so completely? We could have negotiated, found some accommodation between our peoples." Colonel Reyes studied him for a long moment. Every simulation showed the same result. The ARL Dominion would never accept peace. Your entire culture, your religion, your political structure, all predicated on continual expansion. To protect ourselves and other species, we chose the only viable path. Your mathematics as a weapon, Kindarum spat the words. You reduced war to equations. We analyzed every historical model of your empire's behavior over 4,000 years. We ran predictive algorithms based on your religious texts, your military doctrines, your treatment of conquered peoples. Every scenario that included the continued existence of the ARL power structure ended with our eventual destruction. Kindarum leaned forward. "And how does that make you different from us? You dealt in extermination, just as you accused us of doing." "We are very different," Reyes said, her voice cooling. "We don't seek dominion. We attack only when we know with certainty that the alternative is our own annihilation. And we learn these lessons from our own painful history, from times when humans nearly destroyed themselves." She stood and walked to the small window, looking out at the reconstruction efforts visible in the distance. The landscape was still scarred by nuclear fire, but amid the ruins, new structures were rising. "This is what we call victory carved from ruin," she said quietly. "We stand amid devastation, fully aware of the price paid for this peace. The victory is carved, painfully, deliberately, from the very rubble both sides created." Kindarum watched her, seeing for the first time not just the enemy commander, but a being carrying her own burden. "And what happens now? Public execution to cement your moral victory." Colonel Reyes turned back to him, her expression unreadable. She reached to her side and placed a small sidearm on the table between them. "Your death would only reinforce our righteousness," she said. "But perhaps we need to choose a different path." She walked to the door, pausing before exiting. When an empire knows only conquest, destruction becomes inevitable. We use mathematics to ensure our victory, but it's a double-edged sword, ethically speaking. The question now is whether we can use the same predictive power to build something better from these ashes. The door closed behind her, leaving Kindarum alone with the weapon and his thoughts. He stared at the gun, contemplating its significance. It represented a choice, perhaps the first real choice he'd been offered in a lifetime of following the Dominion's inexorable drive for expansion. Outside, construction drones hummed as they cleared radioactive debris, preparing foundations for new structures. Life continuing, adapting, even in the aftermath of apocalypse. Victory carved from ruin indeed. But whose victory? And at what cost to the victor's soul? Kindarum reached for the weapon, his decision already made.